Welcome all of you. My great pleasure to welcome you to this 52nd edition. We have completed 1 year and we have our master blaster today, Shekhar Seshadri sir. He has the maximum number of audience till date. So welcome you, sir. Welcome all the chairpersons. Next slide, please. Let me hand over the session to Professor Dr. Tufan Pati sir. He's from Cuttack. And since, sir, we know you from 1 year and much more beyond that, sir, over to you. I'm saving 1 minute.
Thank you very much.
Please keep our introduction and you can go straight to the chairpersons.
Yes. Please move on. Pavan. So I had the job to introduce two of our moderators, Dr. Amrit Pat Joshi and Dr. Alim Siddiqui. Both of them I shall introduce together. Both are vibrant members of Indian Psychiatric Society, professor of psychiatry, and they represent AC quite effectively. And now, please display the slide of Dr. Watve. Dr. Vidyadhar Watve is from Pune. He is consultant psychiatrist, Pune Hospital and Research Center. He is past president of IPS. He is chairperson of IPS Mental Health Care Act Subcommittee. He is member of American Psychiatric Association. He is a fellow of Indian Psychiatric Society. He is life member of Indian Medical Association. He is life fellow of Indian Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Life member of Indian Epilepsy Association. And life fellow of Indian Association of Suicide Laws. Next slide, please. And he has contributed chapters in 2 books. His contribution in research journals, conferences, workshops, discussion. He has extensively participated. He visited around 30 countries on academic purpose. He has received the Jivan Gaurav Puraskar in 2018. His Lifetime Achievement Award, Manodaya Mental Health Forum. His hobbies involve theatre. He has an important role in the play Kheliya with Dr. Mohan Agassi. He played a role in Khasiram Kotwal, which was staged in 10 countries in international theatre festivals. He played as a doctor in Marathi film Umbaracha. With this, I welcome Dr. Vidyadhar Watve, who had been the chairperson in the first and Musing episode 1 year ago. Next one, please. We have with us young and vibrant Dr. Abir Mukherjee from Kolkata. His current designation and affiliation, he is senior consultant psychiatrist in Medica Super Specialty Hospital. He is visiting consultant psychiatrist in Amri Group of Hospitals. He is involved actively in training and field clinical work with NGO organization Ishwar Sankalpa, caring for the homeless mentally ill. His area of interest involved developmental disorders in children and adults, rehabilitation psychiatry and neuropsychiatry. Major achievements: he is the treasurer of IPS HN at present. He is incumbent chairman of the Child Psychiatric Subspecialty section of IPS. He is ex-EC committee member of IPS West Bengal State Branch. He is ex-convener of IPS Postgraduate Education Committee. He is ex-convener of IPS Ethics Committee. Around 40 publications and audits in international national journals. He is ex-examiner in preparatory MRC Psych courses in UK. He is regular panelist in TYESA. He is regular speaker in various semis at state, zone, and national levels. He is a member of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. He is life fellow of IPS, and he is a member of the West Bengal Medical Council. Welcome, Dr. Abir, and welcome, Dr. Watve. Now I hand over the meeting to the two chairpersons, Dr. Watve and Dr. Abir. Watve, please. Dr. Watve, please.
Good evening, and thanks for this introduction, Dr. Tufan Pati. Dr. Tufan Pati, both the moderators, our speaker, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri, Abir, who is a co-chairperson or moderator with me, all the support staff from Toran, all the field staff of Toran Pharmaceutical, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for this opportunity to chair this session, which is titled Shifting Landscapes of Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Friends, we all know that evidence-based practice in child and adolescent mental health is now increasing. Scientific literature is available on a range of psychiatric disorders in child and adolescent mental health. Next. The readiness of the child and adolescent mental health evidence base needs large-scale dissemination among the professionals, general professionals and child and adolescent psychiatrists. Acceleration of evidence-based practice will require new models of development of clinical services. They can be now community-based, school-based. They will have multidisciplinary approach. And you must know also that the changing scenario of disability in childhood, these are all the changing things. What are threats to mental health of adolescents? I can just point 4. Social media, screen time the children are spending, the adolescents are spending. Various addictions that the adolescents pick up. Charas, bhang, ganja, smoking, tobacco, and whatnot. And with all this, that will lead to turbulent teenage because they have got excessive information, mostly useful, but mostly harmful also. So all this will lead to turbulent teenage. These are the threats to mental health in adolescents. Coming to the scenario of today, pandemic. This pandemic has changed the learning patterns in schools. The old school models have gone. But at the same time, what students are missing is social skills. They are missing socialization and finally social adjustments. So all this are the changing patterns of child and adolescent mental health. Without much delay, I'll request the esteemed speaker and a good friend of mine, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri, or before that, if Abir has few comments, hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Varve, and good evening to everyone. I would also like to thank Dr. Tufan Pati and Amrit and Alim to invite me for this lecture. I'm sure it will be a wonderful experience with Dr. Seshadri. I still remember the one Thursday musing. I took a lot of reference out of that when we had it during the peak of the second wave and the grief and what you spoke, sir. It was really a revelation. I still remember that session. So what I would like to hear from you today, I mean, you have your own set, but what bothers me now in terms of, one is of course COVID, because we are still in the midst of COVID, very much in the midst of COVID. The children are not going to school. We are not yet sure when they would go to school. There are pros and cons for this, for this to happen eventually. So I have been seeing a lot of preschool children with a lot of learning problems. They have been referred to by pediatricians that they are not learning. They are suspicion of autism. The pediatricians are referring to us that, does this child have autism? Because not only are they not learning, their social skills and communication skills are severely jeopardized. In the initial stages of the pandemic, they were allowed increased screen time by their parents. And the fallout of that is perhaps what we are seeing now. And we all know that social interactions and communications are the cornerstone of learning in preschool children. So if we lose this precious window period, then the children might lose their ability of learning. It might be a kind of a lifelong loss to them. So what needs to be done with regards to that? In terms of school-going children, behavior addiction, as has been mentioned by Dr. Vadve, emotional disorders, again, diminished learning opportunities. The new thing, the children were very excited in the beginning with regards to online learning, something new, something unique. But now I think an online fatigue is setting in. And coupled with that, the behavior addiction. So they are more inclined. Their dopamine stimulation is more happening with the video games and other things rather than the learning opportunities. And as well as sleep disturbance, because the whole sleep pattern has been disturbed because of screen time, increased screen time. We were advocating less screen time, but now there is more screen time. So there's a lot of sleep disturbances and other biological problems, vitamin D deficiencies, bone pain, lack of exercise, weight gain, all the other physical things are happening. In terms of high school children, issues about substance misuse, as Dr. Bharve mentioned, friction with parents because they have found their now, they have their own opinions, but the parents are, it's all intertwined together in an enmeshed nuclear family setup. So they are all together and there has been a lot of friction, issues of interpersonal conflicts. Then the wider issue about domestic violence, abuse, cyberbullying, as well as trauma related to deaths, because second wave has seen a lot of deaths. Families have been devastated with a lot of deaths. So they are, the adolescents who have survived, they have to, not only the adolescents, children, adolescents who have survived, they have to deal with all these traumas. The parents have their own issues about anxiety, about their depression, and all these other things. The other thing which we have to be mindful about, that only 24% of the Indian household have access to online facilities. So many children are being deprived of education and many of them are shifting to other chores because of the lack of opportunity, especially in the villages. Because, to bring them to school was itself a challenge. Now, since that connection has been lost, so now they're pursuing other chores. So this will have a long-term impact in terms of a lot of other things. With regards to non-COVID issues, there are few issues which I can think of. One is the issue about comorbidities. The comorbidities, I think, is an issue. Like we are not dealing with a single issue. Like there are age and developmentally adjusted diagnostic differentials which we have to deal with. The neurodevelopmental disorders category, now it includes ADHD and other things. The issues about abuse, bullying, laws related to abuse, assessment of capacity, competence, disability certification, these are all these are all new things which are happening. So we have to be abreast with all these developments. The changing paradigms of therapeutic alliance and empathic engagement, and also the use of medication. Last and not the least, we as, mental health specialists, we have to also deal with the use of medication because now children are developing early. We are seeing OCD at the age of 4 or 5. We are seeing other and those are not all managed through psychotherapy. So what about, most of the drugs are not licensed to be used in young children. So these are the issues which I can think about in terms of the shifting landscapes in child and adolescent psychiatry. So now I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Seshadri formally. Can I have the slide, please? So he needs no introduction. We are all very, very aware of his, whatever he has done, but still as a formal introduction, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri is a graduate of Maulana Azad Medical College, Delhi, and postgraduate in psychiatry from National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore. He is currently Senior Professor, Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Associate Dean at SAMVAD-NIMHANS, Bangalore. Besides working with child and adolescent mental health, including developmental disabilities, he is actively involved in the areas of gender and sexualities, violence, trauma and abuse, children in difficult circumstances, juvenile justice, experiential methodologies, school programs, teacher training in life skills education, community and school mental health programs, forum theater, and qualitative research. And he is, you can contact him very easily, and he has a fund of knowledge. So it's always good to keep his contact details with us for future reference. So it's a great pleasure to invite Dr. Shekhar Seshadri for his deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vidyadhar and Abir. Thank you very much. Of course, I'm going to go to slide share, but just a couple of things. Tofan asked me whether I want to update my CV, and I should have told him so that I actually am not associate dean anymore. I was dean for 2 months, and I was also director of NIMHANS for exactly 9 days, which goes down in the history of NIMHANS as being the shortest stint that any person has done as the director of this institute. And I'm now back to being an ordinary senior professor in the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. 50 years and 2 days ago, something very special happened in the history of humanity. Neil Armstrong laid his foot on the moon. And we are here, Alim, Tufan, and Amrit, in the 52nd and the anniversary session of Thursday Musings. The reason I chose this is for precisely the reason that Vidyadhar and Obir have spoken about. And I'll be taking on board many of the thoughts that they have expressed and sort of go beyond them to put to you a framework of the challenges that we face as far as child mental health is concerned. And the reason I state this, not all teaching hospitals necessarily have a well-established department of psychiatry. Not all well-established departments of child psychiatry run an MD program. Not all departments that run an MD program have a robust input as far as child mental health is concerned. Both Vidyadhar and Obir have referred to the pandemic. I will be referring to it, but in the passing, much has been said. It's important. I'm not taking away from its significance. COVID notwithstanding, my friends, child mental health is a ticking time bomb. Mark my words. Pandemics of the nature of COVID have a disproportionate impact on the more vulnerable populations. As recent as yesterday, the School Mental Health Task Force of the Indian Psychiatric Society had a meeting yesterday where we've spoken about the digital divide and the unequitable aspect of online education. And there are many challenges and complexities there. There are only 2 institutes in this country that offer a DM program in child psychiatry. The first to offer it was NIMHANS, and the next to offer it was PGI Chandigarh. The following places offer a postdoctoral program in child psychiatry: NIMHANS, Chipma, CMC Vellore, Asha Hospital in Hyderabad, Vijayawada Institute, its collaborations in Mumbai, and more recently, St. John's has started a fellowship program. It's in this background that we need to keep in mind Thursday Musings and the first anniversary edition and the shifting landscapes of child and adolescent mental health. And as I speak to you, it is my pleasure to tell you that the Indian Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry has announced a certificate course for qualified psychiatrists in child mental health, which will run twice a month on Saturdays. The course is online for admissions on the website of the Indian Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And I would encourage all of you to have a look at it and the course content and the way that the modules are defined and designed, so that we really look at how child mental health is actually being conceptualized. Friends, child mental health does not lie in textbooks of psychiatry, but out there in the community, in the streets, in homes and families, in childcare institutions, in schools, in books, in music, in theater. Thursday Musings began with a distinct slant towards psychotherapy and traversed different paths. And I felt it is in the fitness of things in this anniversary edition to bring together the spirit of Thursday Musings to really table the ethos, the philosophy, and the significance of child mental health and its shifting landscapes taking inspiration also from the changing landscapes of child mental health that my dear friend Savita Malhotra spoke about when in December last year, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the first independent department of child psychiatry in this country, in NIMHANS. To commemorate the Musings anniversary, therefore, let's travel the expanding and shifting landscapes of child mental health. What do we look at then? सबसे पहली बात तो ये है, what are the contexts of child mental health? What is the role of mental health professionals in this context? And what methodologies should mental health professionals use in these contexts? The reason I'm stating this is that for every one child who manages to reach a tertiary care facility, there'll be 99 others who will never manage to reach you. But they're out there. So child mental health, like I said, plays out in families, in childcare institutions, in schools. There are children who are suffering. There are red flags. We may recognize them, we may not. So child mental health is not just about clinical practice. Its landscape is far more varied and far more extensive. And this is something that the psychiatric fraternity needs to recognize. It already has, but we need to consolidate our actions and our activities to specify what our roles will be in this context, and within that role, what methodologies do we use? Please recall how Vidyadhar was introduced with his deep interest in theater and in the performing arts. Please recall what Abir said about special needs children and the kind of methodologies and pedagogies that are necessary there. None of these are available in textbook of child psychiatry. None of these are taught in mainstream postgraduate courses. And this is where really the nucleus of the shifting landscape lies. What are these contexts? There are children in difficult circumstances, children in conflict with the law. The JJ Act in 2015, following the Nirbhaya case, as all of you know, brought a very important issue, which is the issue of preliminary assessment under Section 15 of the JJ Act. Very quickly, our position is very clear. No child between 16 and 18 who is accused of a heinous crime should ever be transferred to an adult criminal justice system. There is enough provision in the JJ Act to retain that child, use the principles of diversion and the special homes, and provide opportunities for mental health assessment, assistance, and aftercare. Even in the Nirbhaya case, what is the truth? People said he was the most brutal. Is that the truth? Or was it a trial by media? That he lived 80 kilometers away in Delhi with one mentally ill, untreated, dysfunctional parent. Is that the truth? That he was in school, had a learning issue, was punished by a teacher, dropped out of school. Is that the truth? That he shifted to Delhi, was initially cleaning tables and vessels in a roadside eatery. Is that the truth? That he was in regular contact with the family, sending money. Is that the truth? That he lost contact with the family, was befriended by these transport people, and 2 months before the incident, lost contact with the family. Is that the truth? The Juvenile Justice Act, my friends, has two components: children in need of care and protection, and children in conflict with the law. My question to you is, where was the Juvenile Justice Act when this child was in need of care and protection? My submission to you is, every child in conflict with the law was and is a child in need of care and protection. More perverse, why was the JJ Act changed? It was changed, my friends, because a teacher hit a child. If that teacher had not hit the child, he would have never dropped out of school, shifted to Delhi, and the whole story would not have unfolded. This is the tragedy of this entire incident. Now, Section 15 in the preliminary assessment of the JJ Act for children in conflict with the law has 3 subsections. Does the child have the mental and physical capacity to commit the crime? Was the child aware of the consequences of the crime, and in what circumstances did the alleged offense take place? We have worked out in a large project that we are implementing now, a methodology of how this is done. And this is what we mean by shifting landscapes. Mental health professionals need to know how these kind of assessments are done. And I will be taking the liberty to put on chat our links. And if you go to the link and you go to the section on interventions and scroll down to judiciary, you'll see the entire thing of how these assessments are done. And I'm stating this because if we do not do this in a systematic, consensus way, as we have done through field experience, people will be making whimsical and random preliminary assessments and doing injustice to children who are conflict with the law, who come from their own pathways of vulnerability. Children in conflict zones. Chhattisgarh le lijiye aap, ya Northeast mein Kashmir le lijiye. Now, these are circumstances that we have an obligation as mental health professionals to address ourselves. What about individual experiences like child sexual abuse and the whole experiential context of trauma? Now look at trauma itself. Natural disasters, man-made disasters, COVID as an international health disaster, death and dying, terminal illness, attempted suicide and suicide, accidents, disfigurement, loss of limb, child trafficking, child sexual abuse, torture, family issues and family problems. What happened in the first wave was the preoccupation was with older people with comorbidities. What's happening in the second wave? Young people are dying, even those who are vaccinated, 45, 50-year-olds. And the whole narrative of the COVID orphan, children who have lost one or more parents, is coming to the fore. So the whole experiential context of trauma. So you see children in difficult circumstances itself and how many contexts it has. Or you look at child sexual abuse and the whole prevention of child sexual offences law of 2012 and judicial processes. In addition to judicial processes, court preparation and evidence gathering. Muzaffarpur Kand jab hua, the Supreme Court took away the case from Bihar police and handed it over to CBI. The Supreme Court also instructed NIMHANS to assist CBI in the investigation. My team went to Muzaffarpur. Now, mind you, friends, there's a difference in a clinical situation when one child is abused by one person, known or unknown, once. When 47 children are abused over 2 to 3 years by multiple people, some known, some unknown, some with drug-assisted sedation, you're gathering evidence for which incident? And where does postgraduate teaching in psychiatry teach you all this? We submitted a 150-page report on our assistance to CBI that was submitted with the FIR. The case was tried in Saket in the special court. The conviction came in December of 2019 and the sentencing came in January of 2020 before the pandemic hit us in the face. That 7 people were given life sentence for the rest of their lives for the sheer brutality of the case, because these were children that you were supposed to care for and support. And they were multiply abused, by countless numbers of people that. So the shifting landscapes of child mental health needs to factor the kind of preparation that these children, how do we assist children and as expert witnesses? And where are we taught when we go to court how to function and perform as expert witnesses? Let's look at children and families now. There's a whole lot of stuff that is going on parenting. There are parenting programs, there are books on parenting, and there's the whole parenting challenge in the COVID that we're dealing now. And not all challenges and issues of parenting necessarily come to a clinical setup. What about adoption? And in adoption, how do you prepare the child and parents, particularly where there are young children or there are older children? Now look at it from the perspective of an older child adoption. The child has been abandoned, is in a childcare institution for a period of time, and then the adoption process takes place. Now look at it in terms of the experience of that child, used to living with other children at ground level mattresses, an Indian style of toilet, a certain level of food, and you're placing the child in an upmarket condominium with a Western toilet and different kinds of diet. How do you expect the child to be prepared for this kind of transformation? And this kind of shift for the child calls for the skills that a professional needs to have to prepare the child and the parents. Because you can't just pluck the child out of 2 to 3 years of habituation to an institution, to a new place. The child has transitional objects that the child has connected to, a blanket, a toy, a caregiver. And how do you maintain that connection so that there is a smooth transition that takes place and the child does not get traumatized? What about marital disharmony among parents and custody issues? When there are accusations of parent alienation syndrome, particularly in high conflict families and high conflict divorce and court processes, what is the extent to which, what is the choice of the child and what is in the best interest of the child, and how does a child mental health professional ascertain this, becomes a very critical issue to keep in mind. So it's important that we look at the shifting landscapes of child mental health in all the challenges that a professional needs to address. And these are not challenges that are traditionally taught unfortunately, in postgraduate programs. But as part of SAMVAD, which I'm initiating, which I'm executing now, SAMVAD is an acronym that stands for Support Advocacy and Mental Health Interventions for Children in Vulnerability and Distress. It's a national initiative and an integrated resource for child protection, mental health and psychosocial care under the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare, Government of India. And we work in 4 verticals: in care and protection, mental health, education, and policy and law. It's the first time in the history of a mainstream postgraduate teaching hospital that a project actually has a vertical in policy and law, because we believe that it's important in the shifting landscapes of child mental health for us to work intensively with advocacy in the area of policy and law. So what do we mean when we say that child mental health and its shifting landscapes expands to other spaces? We're talking about schools. We're talking about childcare institutions, about courts, about children and the illness context. We're talking about other protection spaces and about clinical practice, some of which Abir has referred to when he spoke about young children and learning issues, and when Vidyadhar spoke about substance use and behavioral addictions and so on. But if you look at school spaces, we have a universal approach, targeted interventions, and indicated interventions. Now, in the program that I alluded to that we had yesterday with the specialty task force on school mental health of the Indian Psychiatric Society, there's a very interesting debate between Dr. Gada and Dr. Jayaranjan Ram on this whole online issue. And then there was a panel consisting of professionals and people from the area of school. And friends, we spoke about the issue of equity and of digital divide. That this is not to say that online education is something that we can wish away. Online education indeed had come to stay even before the pandemic. It would interest you to know that one of the biggest people in the area of online education is actually supporting the Indian cricket team. I won't name them, but you know who I'm talking about. But as we look at the whole return to school in the context of COVID, there are safety protocols, there's the learning gap, and there's wellness and mental health. What universe are these children going back to school from? Have they lost a parent? Has there been domestic violence? Has there been abuse? And so the debate on online education is only one part of the issue. And my friend Jayaranjan Ram said that, you know, if you look at this very interesting international study which is being done on return to school and education with UNICEF and Johns Hopkins, their partner is World Bank. And Jayaranjan said, how is World Bank interested in this? What is World Bank's role in shifting landscapes? Friends, this is an equity. It is a financial, and it is an incredibly important social issue that we are talking about then. So the kind of shifting landscapes even before COVID, in terms of really asking ourselves, where does mental health figure in the education sector? What is the importance of education, or what is the role of education? What is the purpose of education? Is it only numeracy and literacy, livelihood, career, and all that? And my submission to you is that the purpose of education is the development of an egalitarian personhood, the development of a socially responsive and responsible citizen, and the development of an identity that is imbued with aesthetic sensibility, personhood, and identity. So how do schools repurpose themselves? This agenda has already started. And given COVID and its challenges, we really need to think of looking at hybrid modes and how, therefore, the landscape and our roles as mental health professionals in school spaces would need necessarily and indubitably to expand to address these issues. Then, of course, there are resource rooms within schools itself. What about children who have special needs? I think Abir mentioned this. Children with learning issues. And how is this going to work out to really bridge the learning gap? And how can we as a fraternity, and I speak not just of psychiatrists, but of our significant psychologists and psychiatric social workers and psychiatric nurses and special educators, that we really form a network to look at how we can strengthen and use creative methods to really look at resource rooms. In childcare institutions, many of the children who come into childcare institutions come from positions of sexuality and gender vulnerabilities, or disability, or loss and grief, or they have runaway behaviors and conduct issues. One of the issues that has occurred, friends, in the context of the pandemic is this business of trafficking, both for child labor and for sex work. Because trafficking actually addresses the whole problem of the financial status of the family. It's one less mouth to feed. Trafficking is a very dislocating experience. It does not conform to conventional models of trauma. And indeed, the extent to which the shifting landscapes needs to internalize not only trauma-informed care, but healing-centered engagement. The perversity of trafficking of a girl child for sex work, and the kid is rescued after 8 months, 14 years old, has seen 500, 600, 800 men with their pants down. The trafficking industry's knowledge of medicine is so extensive that they give these kids hormone tablets that ensure that the girls do not menstruate, so that there is no loss of income for 4 days or 5 days a month. Now, what happens when these kind of medicines are taken over for an extensive period of time? What does it do to health, and what does it do to mental health? Because these are hormones. And then the whole raid, rescue, repatriation, reintegration, rehabilitation, redressal paradigm. What about reclamation of personhood and reclamation of affirmative sexuality? So the kid is in an institution having meltdowns, and you're saying, you've been rescued, isn't it? As though she should be grateful that she's been rescued there, not understanding what the trafficking process does there. So the nuances and complexities of these kind of child mental health issues in our shifting landscapes that in conventional clinical practice, whether in teaching institutions or in private practice, that this is not the kind of landscape that one conventionally experiences. And the reason I'm stating this, to really look at this anniversary edition of Thursday Musings, is to appeal to all of you, my friends, that the power of Thursday Musings was to really look at what healing means as a central philosophy and ideology of mental health practice. And somewhere in our evidence-based practice and in all the biological research that is going on, and I'm not belittling or minimizing its importance. I deeply respect it, but I'm saying somewhere the traditional practice, which was the foundation of what even an institution like NIMHANS was based on. If you look at, Govindaswamy and Murthy Rao and what they stood for, somewhere we have suffered a loss of that ideology and philosophy. And Thursday Musings has really brought to us the significance of rediscovering and embracing that philosophy. When it comes to courts, the role of mental health professionals in child sexual abuse, in special courts, what about the developmental capacity for evidence gathering in child witness preparation, not tutoring, preparation, and eliciting evidence from young children, a professional as an expert witness? How do you gather evidence from a 3-year-old, from a 6-year-old, from an 8-year-old who is intelligent, an 8-year-old who has hearing and speech deficit? Shifting landscapes. In the JJ Act, an expert witness, psychological evaluation, mediation, And in the juvenile justice system, particularly for children in conflict with the law, what are the pathways to vulnerability? And I had already alluded to Section 15 in preliminary assessment, as well as our obligation as mental health professionals to make recommendations for placement and rehabilitation, to have these skills and expand the landscapes of our mind and practice. As far as children in illness are concerned, chronic illnesses, children infected and affected by HIV, children with malignancies and cancer, children in palliative care, children affected by COVID in the current reality. And how do we factor in all this stuff in the way that we're going to repurpose, reimagine, and reset our training, our engagement, our work, and our initiatives to really address these kind of issues? Some final thoughts on methodologies. You remember what I said, that child mental health lies also in books and music and theater. This is an important methodology in child work because there is art in life and life in art. How can we then use these methodologies to work with children? More importantly, how will this help us as practitioners? Having said this, I would like to acknowledge the assistance of my colleague, Akanksha Kulkarni, who has made this PowerPoint presentation. I'm also taking the liberty to put on chat all the sites that I have referred to. I have laid a framework for you, my friends, about the kind of landscapes of child mental health that we need to keep in mind. The reason I spoke about art and other methodologies is very simple. Many children do not internalize their experiences as language. They internalize it as images, sensations. So there's no point in harassing and haranguing a child to say, bolo, are bologe nahi to main kaise samjhunga? Because it's not internalized as language. And that's where art and drawing and paper pencil tasks actually work then. And what is the extent to which we are really trained to use these methodologies? The use of play, the use of art, the use of music, of theater, of role play. For a socially anxious child, how do you use role play? For a child whose narratives are fragmented because of chronic trauma, how do you use narrative approaches and storytelling and writing as an approach? How do you use drawing as a method to understand, even for evidence gathering? One of the things that we did in Muzaffarpur was actually to have sheets and sheets of paper where the kids pointed out. And all that needs to be documented and submitted, because you can't just report it unless, and it has to be done in the presence of someone else who endorses that no leading questions were asked. And the date is put and what time it was done. And, you know, these kind of processes that are really not understood that. And we experience this when it's not about your clinical skills. Because when you go to court as an expert witness, and when the defense lawyer basically tries to discredit your information, the question that he's going to ask is not about DSM-5 and ICD-11. The question he's going to ask you is, in which language did you speak to the child? And you will say something. He'll say, is that documented in the file? On which date and which time did you speak to the child? Is that documented in the file? The case file that you have produced has written everything in English. So did you talk in English or did you talk in Hindi, Kannada, Bangla, Tamil, Telugu? Then who translated it? See, this is the kind of stuff when we speak of shifting landscapes that we need to be alert to. And increasing demands are going to be placed on us, friends, to really provide this kind of assistance. And so I want you to recognize the points that Vidyadhar Vatve and Abir Mukherjee placed for your consideration in their opening remarks, which are exceedingly critical to the kind of issues that child mental health in specific, but mental health in general is going to face as we emerge from COVID, because COVID has completely changed our mindsets and we really need to reset that. But the issue of the landscapes of child mental health practice had occurred even before COVID. COVID has only sharpened the necessity to reconsider the way that we train, the way that we work, and the kind of methods and processes that our fraternity needs to table and bring back to postgraduate training. We have lost it, friends. Let me be very clear on this, that postgraduate training has become exceedingly international and exceedingly research and evidence-based oriented, and it is not going to help us as far as delivery of services are concerned. That part must continue, but I need to emphasize in this anniversary session of Thursday Musings, that because this was the spirit of Thursday Musings. The spirit, the ideology, the philosophy was really to look at therapeutic processes. Even if you have to tell a family who has a child with disability and you've investigated the child and you found out that the child has some novel mutation, how do you convey that to a family that comes from a modest Mufasal town in order for them to understand what this novel mutation actually means? It needs communication. And that is where we return ultimately to the spirit of Thursday Musings. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Over to chairpersons for their opening remarks.
Dr. Vatve and Avir, please.
Abid sir, you are, yeah.
Yeah, so I can't see where Dr. Vatve is, so I'll make a start. Thank you very much once again. It's so much to take from your lecture. There is this, but it's. I mean, what I mean is that it's so much of a thought-provoking lecture in terms of the context setting and everything else. And you mentioned about the this is just out of the box thinking, which comes from years and years of experience which you have. So I think there has been questions from in the box with regards to the resources available with regards to both as in terms of expert evidence and in terms of the training, how it can be modified. So if you can just give us a gist of about how the higher training has been sort of how incorporates all these these shifting landscapes in terms of, say for example, the DM courses which happens in NIMHANS and PGI. So it would be a good kind of knowledge for us as well with regards to how it is designed to include these areas of shifting landscapes.
Well, the courses, Abir, are designed to look at public child mental health issues. But, again, between intent, content, and actual practice, there is a kind of gap. And what we are trying to do as part of SAMVAD is that we are engaging in extensive training, and we are actually working now with we are actually now working in 28 states. And with the district mental health program, I mean, Amrit and Tofan would be interested to know that Orissa is one of the states where we've done intensive work with the district mental health because it has been it was one of the first and the most receptive states to, and of course we've gone on to complete other states as well. so that they are also equipped to kind of do the assessments that are required, that the number of child mental health professionals are not enough to meet the needs that we have in the country. And what we're going to be doing now, in fact, SAMVAD is celebrating, we've completed a year in operation now, and it's been an extraordinary 1 year. And we are now going to be launching our work through the district administration and the panchayat system, that both through elected representatives, because child protection, mental health, and psychosocial care expands there as well. And partly what the Indian Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health is also doing as part of the certificate course. There are 4 modules. One is a module on child development and so on, then on internalizing disorders, anxiety, trauma, then externalizing disorders, ADHD, children, and the whole section on therapies, interventions, community work, working with systems and so on. That this is because there was a need in an average MD training anywhere in the country. Where is this kind of input given? And we seriously and sincerely felt the need that this should start. So there are all these initiatives taking place. The ICAM initiative is going to work with qualified psychiatrists, whereas SAMVAD works with non-specialist service providers as well, because we want to build a larger body of people who are working in the area for a diverse set of skills to be available, and specialists as well. So we are working with not just with district mental health programs, but with tertiary care institutions as well. In fact, we did a very intensive program with the Gujarat Institute of Mental Health, which is a tertiary care institution. So that's the kind of framework that we need to take to really put child mental health strongly there, out in front as a national agenda.
Well, my personal thoughts are that even with the postgraduate training curriculum, because I've kind of, part of my training is in UK. I've trained from the SHO right up to the consultant level. So there, in terms of the basic training before the membership exams, you have to have a compulsory 6 months stint, either in child psychiatry or in learning disability psychiatry. And in US, it's a different specialty altogether. Child psychiatry has evolved into a different specialty altogether from the adult psychiatry. So is there any scope in terms of in the postgraduate education, in postgraduate psychiatry education, some kind of compulsory few months in terms of, devoted to child psychiatry?
Well, like I said, Abir, when I started, not all teaching departments of psychiatry really have established or specialized child clinics. And therefore, I can certainly say that there are many centers of postgraduate teaching where there is hardly any exposure to child psychiatry. And that's the reason why in a given year, we have people coming anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 months from at least 80 centers to train with us, because that's the only exposure that they get. I've also see, Abir, that what also happens where there are inputs is they tend to be very clinical, and there is no problem with that. Of course, there should be exposure to your ADHD and childhood onset OCD and conduct disorder and social anxiety and all of that. But when you look at contextual issues, I see, for example, in chat that many people have put issues pertaining to adoption. I see, for example, that
you have 4 questions.
There are many questions pertaining to.
Can I ask you those questions, sir? I've assimilated them.
Please do.
Adoption. So actually, there are 3 or 4 questions on adoption. Number 1 is, I have a question for adopted children, how to resolve their conflict regarding 1, abandonment by biological parents, 2, conflict about accepting foster parents when the child is informed about his or her adoption, assuming that she was adopted in early childhood, Next is if the child is adopted, parents have to share with the child what age and at what age the child should know that he or she has been adopted, if he has been adopted. And how can we disclose adoption to a child who was adopted around 6 months back? So how to, what are the psychological issues and when to disclose to the child that he or she has been adopted, sir?
Well, Amrit, the issue is very simple. As far as disclosure of adoption is concerned, this is internationally followed. The earlier you disclose, the better. Disclosure is recommended, and the earlier you do it, the better. Disclosure is not a one-off phenomena. कि आओ बैठो, तुमसे एक बात करना है, सुनो, तुम्हें adopt किया गया था. Thank you very much. It's not like that. It's a process that spreads over a couple of days, couple of weeks, and then you build it. And this is the reason why I've taken the liberty, both NIMHANS Child Project.in, and we have an upgraded version, NIMHANS Child Protect.in. When you go to the section on training and you go down to the 0 to 6, you'll find a lot of our materials on adoption. We in fact have a set of illustrated stories, which are called the Mimi stories, which you can use for older children, and a set of stories and a set of guidelines for adoptee parents of the kind of principles that they follow. All these have been done after many months of field experience and working directly with adoptive parents. They have not been written sitting in the confines of an office. These are works that are built on field experience. So I would recommend all those people who've spoken about adoption to really go. The websites are the same. The NIMHANS Child Protect.in is an upgraded version of the website. So just go to training, look at the 0 to 6, scroll down and go to adoption. You'll see a lot of simple material because this website is intended for universal use. It is public access, free domain, because as Amrit knows, we do not believe in copyright. We believe in copyleft. Please use it, adapt it, send it to your networks. It is intended for use, and so much on adoption.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I think regarding the shifting landscapes, I think you are shifting the care of the children to a positive side. I think you are responsible for this, Seshadri, sir. So, there was a question on the chat box regarding the screen time. So let me add my inputs also. Suppose the online school is going on, 5-6 hours is there. And then what is the appropriate screen time? How should a parent approach? Many parents come asking, sir, he's all the day on the phone. So what is your take on this?
Well, let me put it this way, that the American Association of Pediatrics, Indian Academy of Pediatrics, the Indian Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health have all put out guidelines and directives as far as screen time is concerned. Now, screen time is an overarching term. It means the smartphone, it means television, it means the laptop, it means games and other gaming devices and so on. That very simply stated, for preschoolers under the age of 6, it is recommended that the total amount of screen time should be about an hour to an hour and a half, and that too not continuously, but in 15 to 20 minute sessions and interspersed with 6 to 9, 10, maybe 2 to 3 hours. And as you grow older, again, not continuously. The issue is not a prescription about the time. The issue is a family plan. What kind of a model or a message does a family set about the kind of screen time that they themselves use? And, is there an agreement? Is there a family plan about how a day will be organized? So much for online education. So the point is not to wish away screen time. That's not the point. But if a 16-year-old is 14 hours, on gaming, tending towards behavioral addiction, and if you have a family plan and you have a routine to say, so much on family chores, so much on us doing, we time together, so much on extended contact with the family, so much on your hobbies and recreation, and then so much on online education, and then it comes down to 8 hours or 10 hours, and the family may complain, अब भी 8 घंटे बैठा हुआ है, लेकिन जहाँ 14 घंटे से 8 घंटे कम हुआ है, it's an improvement. So there are all these kind of recommendations that one needs to keep in mind. The most important thing is a family plan. But there's one more important issue that I want to state here, which is regarding preschoolers. There is a difference between processed experience and unprocessed experience. If a kid is sitting in front of the screen, and those are merely images. They have no meaning. It's just an experience. And that experience is not information. And that information is not knowledge unless you process it to say, ki, Are wo dekho, glass se pani pi raha. Are wo dekho, wo gir gaya. So you're processing it and converting it into. So one of the things about pandemic coming back again to the point that Abir made in his opening comments is I think that the mental health fraternity needs to seriously think. See, a 1-month-old child, a 6-month-old child, even before COVID, would more or less be at home. With adolescents and their frustrations, that's a different predicament. But for these 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, what has the pandemic done in terms of an entire generation of childhood and its impact on the anthropology of child development? What's going to happen to these children 5 years, 10 years from now? And this is something, friends, that we have to seriously think about. And this is what we need to research. That's the response I have, Aline, to the issue that has been put.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. What I was saying, children having some symptoms mimicking the autism spectrum. So the people are referring such patients to us. And in one of the case, it was before this COVID pandemic, when the screen time, when the phone was taken, the small child was on many hours on the phone because the parents were busy, both were working. When the phone was taken away, human contact was normalized. So the speech and this eye contact, all the things recovered by itself.
Right.
Amrit.
Sir, there's a very interesting question, and then it's also in my mind. That's why I took up this question. Sir, can you speak about the frequent cases of mutually initiated sexual intimacy at a far earlier age of 11 to maybe 15 years in children, where they are brought to a mental health professional by parents due to that? We see a lot of children coming to us, or due to emotional devastation following a breakup. So, they also asked about managing effects of exposure to porn at a very early age. A lot of our kids are being exposed to porn at a very, very early age. So how to go about, how to manage this, what to talk to the parents, how to talk to the kids? Yeah.
See, again, I would like to respond to this in terms of the premise of my presentation, which is about shifting landscapes. Let's talk about sexuality. Now, with our own medical education, and I see that my teacher Mohan Isaac has put a very relevant comment here saying that the training of psychiatrists in India needs to be seriously reviewed and radically reformed, responding to the real mental health needs of our country. So I'm connecting to this as well, and then referring it to sexuality. Look at your own MBBS training, look at your own postgraduate training in psychiatry. Where were sensitive, effective, empathic inquiry and communication about sexuality ever taught? Now, what I'm finding is even where research is concerned, where we submit protocols to look at the whole adolescent sexual consent issue, both girls who run away consenting or the whole consent coercion dynamic and ambiguity. And you submit a protocol because this is important to know, how do adolescents make sexual decisions? Because it's a public health issue. And the moment you submit it, the moment an ethics committee reads the word sex or sexuality, they have hundreds of questions. If you do not research on areas like this, how is our work even going to progress then? So the point is, we do not have a culture of conversations with our children. So whether a child has chanced by porn or whether a child has experienced abuse, if there is a discursive and open, a disclosive and a communicative relationship, it makes it easy to process. And the child feels reassured that I can go to Papa with anything and, I won't be shut up, or, I won't be told, where the hell did you pick up this stuff from? What kind of stuff? Show me your mobile phone. I'm going to check what kind of stuff you're surfing, rather than saying, come sit down, let's talk about it then. So the kid feels comfortable in. So the idea of a happy, healthy, safe, and responsible sexual decision-making process. And the notion, therefore, that whether it's pornography or sexuality or sexual trauma, we work through certain realms of human experience, of relationship dimensions, health dimensions, safety, permission, consent, privacy, boundaries. And that becomes the context of discussion and discourse, and it makes it then easy for children to say, now I've understood. And this is why I'm saying that the shifting landscapes of the practice of child mental health needs to return to the old-fashioned psychiatry that we practiced and all of us trained in 40, 50 years ago. It's time, my friends. It's time.
Alim, can I just add in?
Sure.
Question? Sir, that's another question. I think many of us know about it, but then somebody has asked, I thought I should ask you. When we suspect somebody as has had child sexual abuse, and as you told that drawings, narratives are very, very important. So somebody is asking, so I'm just putting it that what should we tell a child to draw if we suspect childhood sexual abuse? We are not going to lead somebody to draw something. So what should be the general approach to a child when we tell him or her to draw something? So what should be our conversation be like?
Well, to respond to that within the confines, of a 75 or a 90-minute session, I would not do justice to. But it's like this. Drawing is only the methodology. As I said, there is an intent, there is content, there is methodology, and there is processing. So one actually sets up a certain premise or a context. And that's why I keep saying context matters. Whether it's the context of a child's primary experience or the context of that particular interaction that one is having with the child, to say, there have been some concerns which I believe you've expressed to your family, and we just need to work on it. We have enough of time. There's no rush to. So, did your parents tell you anything about why they brought you here, or do you have any idea that you could share with me? And so you kind of establish the context. And then you build a consensus to say that, so is there anything that, so narratives, is there anything that, you have in your mind, some things that you'd like to tell me? And also to assure them that, sometimes it's, you need to predict why children have hesitancies, why they don't disclose. Is it because of language? Is it inhibition? Is it fear? Is it confidentiality? Is it fear that my parents will be angry or upset or distressed? That to be able to anticipate and reassure the child that I know sometimes that there are these kinds of, but whatever decision I take, whether to discuss with your parents, I'll share that with you first, and only if you're okay, that will we go ahead, and exactly what I will tell them, I'll discuss with you, and I'll do so only in your presence so that you can stop me at any time. And sometimes it's comfortable to talk, sometimes it's comfortable to write or to draw. And that's how you introduce it. And then you build a narrative on that. So, the drawing by itself is not, so it's not some mystical or mythical or mysterious thing that, you look at the drawing and say, I know. It's not like that. It's a question of processing that. It's not that the child draws a circle or a straight line and you make some, fantastic Freudian interpretation on art-based work. And art therapy is not about some fantastic knowledge or insights that you have about children's drawings. Process, context and process. That combination is what is powerful and effective as far as child interventions are concerned. That's also part of the whole shifting landscape of practice, that shifting away from this whole clinical mode, not that clinical history taking, diagnosis based on classificatory systems, and a good prescriptive practice is not legitimate. That's not what I'm saying. But that's not enough for child mental health. That's the point I'm making.
Thank you, sir.
Very, very well, sir. So there is a question by our senior Dr. Arun Marwali. The manpower in dealing with child, is it in conflict with law, as in Juvenile Justice Board and Child Welfare Committee and related manpower is not adequate? So how to improve this situation? What steps government is taking in this regard? Any update on this?
Well, that's what we're doing as part of SAMVAD. And I'm happy to put on chat again the links for everyone in the meeting. Do have a look at these links. Particularly, do have a look at one of the sessions. We've been doing these sessions with judicial academies. We've done it in Kerala, Bombay, Rajasthan, and Manipur. And Justice Madan Lokur, ex-Judge Supreme Court and ex-chairperson of the Supreme Court Committee on Juvenile Justice, was part of these deliberations. And we had 3 propositions based on Section 15, particularly referring to mens rea. And 3 judges speak in favor and 3 judges speak against as an exercise. And then we work on. So what we are doing is we are actually taking this preliminary assessment format and how to do it. So there is a guideline how to do it and how you actually submit the report to the JJ board that is available in 2 of the the materials that are present in the training section of the website, nimhanschildproject.in or nimhanschildprotect.in. So you go to the training section, go to judiciary, and there are 3 documents there. One is mental health and developmental aspects of evidence gathering under POCSO. And there are 2 manuals on children in conflict with the law on exactly how preliminary assessment is done, looking at the kind of vulnerabilities that these children come from and how you produce a report that holds on to the principles of reformative, rehabilitative, and restorative justice versus retributive justice.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. So there are 2 questions, sir, on maybe one of the questions is most of the parents have a lot of conflicted or confused concept and approach to sex and sexuality. How can they have a mature and clear conversation with kids? And there's another part. How should a child who has precocious sexuality due to repeated witnessing parental sexual behavior? So in this, respect, how should the parents approach the child? So one is about sex and one is about, precocious sexuality.
Well, I would like to address this both by referring again to what I called as the window approach, and also the issue that Dr. Ruma has put down about how to deal with children with conduct disorder. I'll tell you why. There is a certain premise that one uses when one works with children, and I call them as context establishment, consensus building, motivation enhancement, and insight facilitation. Context establishment. आइए बैठिए, स्वागत है आपका, कैसे आना हुआ, that मुझे क्या मालूम, पूछो उनसे, लेके आए मुझे. Context is not established. Whereas if the child says, they've been complaining about the fact that I get angry, or, that this happened. Consensus building. But it's not as much as they make it out to be. They exaggerate. As opposed to saying, yes, it is a problem, I'd like to do something about it. Motivation enhancement. Yes, my anger is a problem. Yes, it's quite bad, but I don't want to do anything about it. Tell them that, they have to. Insight facilitation. I know that I have anger as an issue. Yes, it's sometimes as bad as, they say it is. I'd like to do something about it, but I don't know what happens to me that, So context establishment, consensus building, motivation enhancement, and insight facilitation, 2 processes. Coming to the whole issue of sexuality, you'd recall I'd referred to this in the context of a workshop that I'd done many years ago. And there was this kid that I was noticing that, and I knew he would be trouble. And this was in the HIV/AIDS pandemic era when, we were talking about healthy and safe sexuality. 40 children in the class, 1 hour talk, Q&A. Sir, is it okay to have sex with a woman when she's menstruating? I said, forget about the sex and the menstruation. Who's the woman? Neighbor? Relative? Problem, isn't it? Sir, if that's not the problem, then is it okay? I said, look, we are living in the era of HIV, safe sexuality, multiple partners, protection and all that. So, sir, if that's not the problem, then is it okay? I said, look, conception, contraception, safe period, but sometimes, errors can take place. Sir, if that's not the problem, then is it okay? The opportunities that men, boys have to explore sexuality versus girls and women, the context of sexuality in relationships, as opposed to, just anything anyone does, that these are complex emotional issues and sometimes they can be problematic. So if that's not the problem, then is it okay? Some people think it's kinky and exciting, and some people think it's yucky and distasteful. Personal choices in sexual behaviors are personal and private. And each of us has a unique career of our own sexualities through, our fantasies and our experiments and our fear of discovery and our legitimate relationships. And, and sometimes it's affirmed and sometimes it's not, because it was, our first experience was that of abuse. Now, I did not tell him yes or no. Now, mind you, if this kid had put this question to a parent, the response would have been, kahan se seekh ke aaye sab? One kite. Whereas what I did was I gave them a framework. Who's a woman? Relationship framework. Health. Relationship integrity. Safety. Personal choice. Gender. So that's the way that one really addresses issues of this nature. And this is what I mean, again, by shifting landscapes. And unless we are informed and enlightened about the aspects of human consciousness and various aspects of behavioral choices, particularly in complex contexts like relationships and sexuality and risk behaviors. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about as something that our fraternity really needs to address and table. I'm saying this particularly as we approach 3 minutes to 9:30, again to remind you all that in this anniversary edition of Thursday Musings, the 52nd, 50 years and 2 days after Neil Armstrong put his foot on the moon. I hope he did. I hope it was not a hoax. I'm presuming he did. But Thursday Musings is certainly not a hoax. It is there, available as tangible evidence for all of us to rededicate ourselves to the people that we wish to serve and rededicate ourselves to the basic ideology and philosophy around which the whole specialty of psychiatry was based.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So there is a question in the chat box. So you said about regarding the context and processing of the stimulus given and then interpreting the child's mental state. What the question in the chat box is regarding the projective tests. So what is their role? What is their reliability and how they have evolved over a period of time, their use?
You would have noticed that by and large, projective tests and the kind of interests that we all had in it in the late 60s, 70s, and the early 80s, and it's fairly died down in terms of manualized CBT interventions and standardized tools of assessment with good Cronbach's alpha. So that's where I see as the loss that the landscape of our practice has taken. But we still use it. I mean, we may not use child Rorschach or child apperception tests or draw a person, but perhaps we use draw a person or RCPT, which is the controlled projective technique of drawing and narrativization. In fact, there is an increasing return. If you look at some of the resources in the website that we've given, particularly the SAGE series on the interpersonal violence series, and Cheryl Karp and Tracy Butler's book on treatment strategies for sexually abused children, it uses a lot of art techniques and a lot of techniques which are kind of projective in their basic premise and principle. They may not be the standard techniques that we use. So I think a time has come, friends, at least for those of us who are from the domain of clinical psychology, to re-examine how we can creatively use some of these projective techniques to work with children.
Thank you, sir. Amrit?
I think sir has told that we should shut one. We'll give it to the chairpersons. I think
so. Yes, it is 9:30.
I also have a suggestion again, Amrit. I see that there's a lot of stuff on chat. It would be useful if you send all that to me. As always, yes, it would be my honor to actually do a category analysis of that. And at some point of time, when Thursday Musing starts its second year, it would be my honor to come back. I also state this with a great degree of pride that this is the 6th program out of 52 that I'm doing for Thursday Musings. And to be in a position to have done 10% of Thursday Musings is a source of great privilege and pride to me. I take it as an honor that you have bestowed on me. And I would be happy to look at the many comments that have come on chat and to do a special session which will take in those issues And I will make a presentation of that at some point of time going ahead. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure,
Chairpersons.
sure, sir. Chairperson's comments, please.
Dr. Wadhwe, actually, I started it off, so I would request.
Yeah, Wadhwe sir is here. Yes, sir, please.
Sir. Thank you. Shekhar, I'm absolutely stunned. I have no words to express how much impressed I am. I was not particularly interested in child and adolescent psychiatry, but now I have redeveloped the interest. Number two, I can't but help mention Mental Health Care Act of 2017. We know IPS is fighting for that. And this particular point that child and adolescent mental health is completely ignored in this Mental Health Care Act of 17, so is military psychiatry. So after today's deliberations, today's what I have heard, I'm going to discuss along with Brigadier M.S.V.K. Raju with our lawyer in Bombay, Advocate Rajesh Shirke. And these points may be brought to the notice of Honorable Court when we do arguments on this. This is the biggest gain that I have today. And thank you very much, Shekhar, again. Thanks, Abir, for co-chairing this session. Thanks, both the moderators. And thank you very much, Tufan. Thanks again for honoring me and asking me to chair the session. Thank you very much and have a very good night. Thank you.
Abir.
Yeah, again, thank you very much. And it's an honor to be present in the anniversary sort of session. Thanks, Dr. Tufan Pati and Amrit and Alim for inviting me. Yes, as Dr. Seshadri mentioned, that there are plenty of issues which have come in the chat box. I think one other interesting point was about this whole issue about assent and consent, and that brings to the old concept of Gillick's competence and how, but those are issues which are again, sort of, it will invite a lot of discussion, so we don't have time really, but if that can be taken as a note for future discussions. And it has been really, it's always a learning experience with Dr. Seshadri. I mean, not only in Thursday Musings, he came for our KPC annual program as well, if he remembers, and we had a fantastic time. And
of course,
yes, and of course you're singing at the end of all of it. So that has become part of our program. So we are having the annual program this Sunday as well. So if you get time, you can join in. So, but thank you very much for today, and I hand over to Dr. Tufan Pati and Amrit and Alim.
Tufan sir, for the concluding remarks. Sir, life skills spec, somebody has asked to give a talk on life skills. Yeah. We will discuss it later on. Tufan sir.
I am really overwhelmed as expected and as usual by Dr. Seshadri's talk. And I'm thankful that he has offered for another session. And I'm sure another session will also be there after another session. I want to take the privilege of Dr. Mohan Isaac and Dr. Mohandas being here for their just short comments. Dr. Mohan Isaac, please. Are you here?
Sir, please unmute yourself. Mohan sir.
Yeah, I have unmuted. Thank you very much, Dr. Tufan Pati. You caught me unawares. I was just, relaxing, watching and listening. Very quickly, I am so delighted that this is the 52nd anniversary edition. And how else could you have celebrated this 52nd anniversary edition other than inviting Dr. Shekhar Seshadri to give a talk? He said that about a tenth of these talks, 6, he said, that itself is a testimony to, the kind of topics that he covers, the excellent manner in which he covers, the large number of people who wait for his sessions on Thursday Musings. So my compliments to Dr. Seshadri for raising very, very, very thought-provoking comments. He did mention about, listening to Shekhar every time I realize that we are training psychiatrists for Australia, for UK, for United States, and not for our own country. the numerous problems. I mean, he said that even today, from 80 centers in the country, NIMHANS trains 2 weeks to 3 months people in child psychiatry. That is the current state. Of course, we have to patiently wait and improve. But I think there is he has made a very strong case for reviewing our postgraduate training, at least, if not radically, at least different components. I mean, like, the various things that psychiatrists are called for with very little experience in child psychiatry, and how would they be doing things? And he has given excellent examples. The other thing I want to mention is that I learned from Shekhar today that one of the things that we had forgotten in the 1980s when we developed the district mental health program at Bellary, which has become the prototype model for implementing the national mental health program in the country. It has spread all over. One thing which was lacking at that time, of course, for obvious reasons, not bothered about children. But I was delighted to hear that, in many states, child mental health is very well integrated. I was also very happy to hear that one of the leading states which is doing this is Orissa, which is also the home of this Thursday Musings. Lastly, of course, there are numerous points, but it is almost the end of the time. But I just wanted to say various things that the SAMVAD program is doing, involving the Panchayat Raj organizations, larger number of people, less trained and less sophisticated people. This is the only way that mental health can be taken to the grassroots, to the unreached in a country such as ours. So thank you, Shekhar. I was delighted to listen to your lecture. Thank you very much. And you have already promised the organizers that you will come back again. I look forward to your coming back, and I look forward to listening to you. Thank you, Tufan, for asking me to make this comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Munaisak. And my dear, very good friend, Dr. Mohandas, please, few words.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was nice to see and hear Shekhar. But Shekhar has changed so much. I mean, last, I think, how many decades back, man? 3 decades or 4 decades. Anyway, it was very philosophical. And anyway, on this platform, you cannot be theatrical with your usual, what do you call, musical touches. Anyway, thank you very much. And also, I am happy to see RSM, Vidyadhar Vatve, and many others. And I endorse the view of Mohan Isaac that it is high time that we have to change our curriculum of the PG education. We are really repeating the stale, the good old-fashioned thing we have to refine. I think Mohan Isaac might remember me talking to him a decade back. We have to throw out our mental status examination in the current format to the dustbin, and we have to refine it. And even the history taking, we have to reform it. I think Mohan Isaac might be remembering. And anyway, thank you very much. I'm very happy during this COVID scenario. I could see many people in the frame, and especially Shekhar. My happy memories go back. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohandas. Now over to Amrit for the final.
Sir, whenever our shoulders droop, me and Alim's and Tufan sirs, what should we do? We think of only one person, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri. He just makes us, Shekhar sir is there again, we'll have a bang. So as always, sir is brilliant, excellent. I have no words to speak. It has been a brilliant session with Dr. Vatve, Dr. Abir Mukherjee sir. Both have been guiding as always. And to add to the, icing on the cake, Mohan sir, Mohandas sir, and a lot of senior people who have joined us. It is a big journey. We never thought, one day when I woke up and we discussed about this, we never thought it will go to 52 editions. And even on the 52nd edition, we had more than 450 logins today. And that's too good. Even, lockdown have opened. People have been, rushing, doing their work, catching up on the last 1.5 years they've missed. In spite of that, people coming back and, being activated. People are talking about topics. People are asking questions. I think that speaks a lot about the whole process we wanted to, and the whole change in the thought process we wanted in the practitioners around us. And I think we have achieved something out of it. So thank you everybody. Thank you to our team, Dr. Tufan sir, Aleem, a lot of backroom people who have been helping us, Torrent people, and our Odisha psychiatric group. Thank you. Catch you again next time. We also have Mohan Das sir shortly coming. He'll be speaking on, Aleem, what's the topic?
It will be announced. I will not say it today.
Okay. सर मोहन दास सर आप बोल दीजिए टॉपिक.
मैं बोल सकता हूँ. मोहन दास तुम ही बोल लो.
सर आप बोल दीजिए.
Sir has told me to not yet take on it.
I have to disclose
the
topic.
Okay.
Yeah, sir has told me not to disclose.
I have already told Aleem and others, you will get the details. It is something between male and female. Because we had so many questions on sexuality here. So I don't know whether female is different from male at all, or female is different from male. And basically I will be looking at something on the wiring of the brain, but the format will be different. It will be just a Thursday, not only Thursday musings, there will be some sort of satirism, some comments. The format will be different. The format of the talk will be in a different perspective. You can see next week.
Thank you so much.
So that is suspense.
Way of presenting.
Yeah, that is suspense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you everybody for joining in our birthday. And
thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, sir.
I initially thought of requesting Dr. Seshadri for a birthday song, but it's late. And yes, we keep it reserved for the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Sir, with your permission, can we close the meeting now?
Yes,
or Seshadri, sir, do you have time for a birthday song? If you have.
हम भी अगर बच्चे होते नाम हमारा होता गबलू शबलू खाने को मिलते लड्डू और दुनिया कहती हैप्पी बर्थडे टू यू बार बार ये दिन आए बार बार ये दिन छाए तू जिए हजारों साल ये मेरी है आरज़ू हैप्पी बर्थडे टू यू हैप्पी बर्थडे टू यू Happy birthday to Thursday Musings. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Happy
Thank
birthday.
you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.